I wanted to kind of go backwards a little bit here, sorry, and go back to your addiction. So, when you were in that state, what kind of clicked to for you to go get that help? Like, what changed?
Well, it's a $1,000,000 question, and I say that because if you could figure out clearly, you would be a multimillionaire if you could just figure out how to get everybody out of addiction, right? So it's not an easy question. It's I can only share kind of what happened to me, and even that is an interpretation. But it was a period of over a couple of years of beginning to realize like this isn't working for me, and beginning to try and get help. So I had been in treatment a couple times before I actually stayed sober kind of that last time. So I've been to treatment a few times. I've been to a bunch of meetings. I'd tried moving here. So I tried all these different things and they didn't work. Um, the thing that was the big thing for me was I got arrested. Well, I was homeless, which is bad enough, but apparently that wasn't bad enough. But I got arrested and I was looking at, potentially 50 years of jail time. And and when I got arrested, I had been sleeping in the back of a van. I lost that van. I lost the job I'd had, which was providing me a lot of the money for my habit, along with the crimes I was committing. And I just was out of ideas. And so I said, I'll go to detox just because I was kind of freaked out. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where to get more money. And I just thought, I'll just go to detox. And while I was there, they said, we think you need to go into longer term treatment. And I originally said no, and then I went back to my room there, and I just had one of those moments in recovery, call them a moment of clarity. And the moment of clarity was, I'm going to die if I go back out there. I weighed 100 pounds. I had hepatitis C. I was really sick. I was in bad shape. And so in that moment, I just decided to go into longer term treatment. And from there, I think hope started to build a little bit. I do think that there's two things we can look at in for recovery to take or work with people. We talk a lot about consequences, right? We all have that idea, an addict's got to hit bottom. So consequences are important, but I know people who have had consequences that would make everybody listening to this podcast like, you know, hide their head like, God, how could you possibly go through that and still use? And yet they go on and on. And for a lot of addicts, the consequence is death. So consequence is part of it. But the other part, I think, is hope. And so I think what happened was I had enough consequence to put me in a place, and then I got exposed to enough hope. And the hope was, oh, I could really live a different way. This can actually happen. And so I think those two things together provide a fertile ground that recovery can grow out of. So I think that's kind of what happened in my case. And I've seen it happen that way for a lot of other people also.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're clean, man. Like I hear a lot of addiction stories like with friends and like people that my family knows, people that my friends know, and it's like I think what a lot of people forget is like you know, uh, people who are addicted, they're just thrown away by society so quickly. They're just they people just assume that they're choosing that lifestyle and like whatever. But some people actually have like in their brain, it's like I need this for me, and it's like they've convinced themselves of that, and people just don't get that. So I feel like it's important to shine light on the fact that they're people too. It's just their brain's kind of against them, for lack of a better
Their
term.
their brain's totally against them. Yeah. I mean, addiction is I mean, at the end of the day, the person does have to decide, finally make a decision. I'm not going to do this anymore, right? But to say that those people have free will around addiction in the same way that somebody who's not addicted is just not accurate, right? Because what happens is that there's a series of things that go wrong in addiction, but one of them certainly is that the brain itself starts to change. You damage the brain. You actually damage the parts of the brain that are capable of saying, this is a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't do it. So there's a whole host of factors. And then a lot of times people with addiction, there's trauma issues from their background. There's a huge amount of mental illness that goes along with addiction. Um, so yeah, we need more treatment options for people. That needs to be the way that we orient. And yes, we also need consequences in certain cases for people. So
Yeah.
it's a very tricky. It's not an easy thing to solve, like, which is why I said it's sort of a multi-million dollar question, because if you actually knew how to solve it, you'd be richer than, you know, you probably wouldn't be richer than Bill Gates, but you should
Yeah,
be.
seriously. Well, that's my next endeavor. I'm going to solve addiction, just casually on the side.
Just get back to me once you've got that solved. That would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
Just let me
yeah.
know.
So in your 7 years of doing the podcast,
Yeah.
what is like what's the best advice that you would take and give your younger self?
Hmm. Well, three or four things popped to mind, but I'll just pick one. Um, you are not your feelings. You are not your feelings. There's you, and then you're kind of the space that these feelings happen in. And if we can get a little distance from them, a little space from them, it can make such a huge difference. um, Lots of things come out of that ability to sort of do that, to make that delineation. A lot of really positive things come out of it. So that, if I had to put it down into sort of one thing, that might be it.
Hmm. I like that advice. I know a lot of people. Actually, I'm not even going to mention it because it's a point that I want to get to later. But so let I wanted to talk about your new program, Spiritual Habits.
Hmm.
So, what inspired you to make this program?
Yeah. So Spiritual Habits is a program that was my attempt to, um, what it is the combination of what I would consider to be spiritual principles that are widely agreed on by every major religion out there, most anybody who's wise, most philosophical traditions, things that everyone would go, yeah, yeah, that's good. You should do that. Generosity. Yeah, generosity, that's good. No argument. Right. And but what I looked at with spiritual principles is I went, well, they tend to be things that we believe in, or things that we go, oh, yeah, I should do that. Or we hear it on a podcast. We're like, I need to do more of that, but then we don't. So what I did, so spiritual habits is an attempt to marry those ideas
Mm,
to what we know about behavior science, with an attempt to bring them together so that we can actually start to live these spiritual principles out in our lives, because that's where they're actually useful. They're not so, I mean, they're great ideas, but they make a real difference in our lives when we live them. So for example, being present more often to the moments of our lives, another principle that everybody would go, yeah, that's a good idea, right? But it only is helpful if we're actually present to more moments of our lives. So it's an attempt to take what we know about behavior science and wed it with these principles so that we can we can live them more fully.